Welcome to the Anxiety at Work podcast. I am Chester Elton, and this is my co-author and dear friend, Adrian Gostick.
Hi, everybody. We hope the time you're spending with us today will help remove the stigma of anxiety and mental health in the workplace and your personal life. We invite experts from the world of work and life to give us ideas and, most importantly, tools to deal with anxiety in our world.
And it's all made possible because of our wonderful sponsors. Life Guides is a peer-to-peer community that helps people navigate through their day-to-day stressors by providing a place of empathy, listening, wisdom, and support with a guide who has walked in your shoes, experiencing the same challenge of life and your experiences as you have. Go to lifeguides.com/schedule a demo and add the code HEALTHY2021 to the free text box, and you'll get 2 months of free service. That's lifeguides.com/schedule a demo, HEALTHY2021 for 2 months of free service. A great deal.
It really is. And you can put in schedule or schedule. Either way, it works, right? Hey, we also want to send out a big thanks to our sponsor, Go Happy Hub, the most inclusive and timely way to communicate and engage directly with your frontline employees and candidates with 95% open rates. With Go Happy Hub, you can send text messages directly from corporate and enable permissions for your frontline leaders to communicate with their teams. They can send notes of gratitude, logistical updates, referral opportunities, LTOs, new hire introductions, learning content, celebrations, and more. So, easily you get the right message, the right people, with simple segmentation. That's Go Happy Hub. Go Happy Hub. And right now, Go Happy Hub is offering 2 months free if you just simply mention Adrian or Chester. How great is that?
Is it on schedule or on schedule? That's all I want to know, Adrian.
Either way.
Yeah.
Either way.
Well, listen, our guests today really are phenomenal people. They've become dear friends of ours. It's Peter Bregman and Howie Jacobson. Peter is recognized as the world's #1 executive coach and coaches C-level executives in organizations such as CBS, Mars, Citi, United Media, and many others. That's Mars in the candy bar, by the way, not as in the planet. Peter is an award-winning best-selling author and contributor of 18 books, including Leading with Emotional Courage. And his dear friend and co-author for his new book, Howie Jacobson, is a PhD, is an executive coach to clients ranging from startup founders to established and rising Fortune 100 leaders. He is director of coaching at Bregman Partners and head coach at the Healthy Minds Initiative. He is the author of AdWords for Dummies, and together with Peter, he and Howie are the authors of You Can Change Other People, the 4 steps to help your colleagues, employees, even family up their game. And it was published in September of this year. We're delighted to have you as part of the podcast. Welcome, Peter and Howie.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Looking forward to it.
Well, I'll start with Howie. Let's pick on you first, Howie, because we're delighted to have you both on the podcast. Now, your new book, which is really terrific, You Can Change Other People. Love the title, love the concept here. And you talk in this new book about the way we try to change people creates more resistance to change. And you say, Howie, that it's not that people naturally resist change, it's that they resist being changed. So talk about that. Talk about the 4 steps you found to real lasting change.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. The idea that we resist being changed is obvious to us when we think about it and how we respond when other people try to change us in heavy-handed ways. When they criticize us, when they shame us, when they criticize us and we feel shame even though they're not trying to shame us, when they try to motivate us, when they offer unsolicited advice. Like, none of us really likes that. And we can feel our own defenses rising, even if they're saying something that we know we should do, and even if they're saying something that we were thinking ourselves, right? So we know for ourselves that we don't like being changed in that way. But like I said, we like to grow, we like to change, we like to improve. All of us want to do things to behave in ways that are more consonant with our best interests and our values. So what Peter and I really try to articulate in this book is, so how can we support people as they go about making the changes that they want to make, or in some cases aren't yet aware that they want to make but need to make? And so the first thing we had to do was come up with a process that would actually allow people to replace their, our impulses that don't work with a simple set of steps that you can follow that reliably do work.
So just real quick, Howie. So we know that shaming people doesn't work, and yet we do it. And we do it all the time. So why? Why do we do it? Even though we know it's not going to work. Is it because it just makes us feel better and superior? Walk me through that.
Oh, you sure don't want Peter to take this one?
Yeah, Peter. Yeah, you've shamed your share of people. You've
Yeah,
shamed me on
is that
occasion.
Why? I guess.
Yeah.
Peter's the expert in shaming. Let's ask him. Or maybe I've just been shamed enough. Yeah, you bring up a great point, and I don't think we ever mean to shame people. Sometimes maybe people mean to shame people, but I don't think so. I think that shame is also something that's actually very particular to someone, like something that you might be ashamed of, I wouldn't be ashamed of. But I think the reason we end up being messy with how we treat people and which leads a lot to their shame is because we lack some degree of empathy around it. We're saying, like, here's someone, I have feedback for them, so I'm going to give them feedback. And, I know I'm going to be, radically honest about it because transparency is great. So I'm just going to tell them exactly the way I see it. And they, when we do that, we almost feel like we're being helpful in that way, or we almost feel like, we're being righteous. But we're not necessarily empathizing. We're not in that moment going into the head of the other person and saying, what would it feel like to this person to hear what I'm saying? Would it be hurtful? Would they go into, would they be embarrassed about it? Would they, what would it feel like? And I think when we're the one kind of dishing it out, in a sense, it's easier to do it than it is to receive it in a sense. So I think what we end up doing is we skip that step that says how will this feel to the other person. And when you think about the things we do that end up shaming people, for the most part, they don't come from a bad place. When you're giving someone direct feedback, it's coming out of a good place. It's coming out of a place of wanting to help them, of wanting to support them. The problem is that a lot of the research, the data shows that doesn't actually help. And what Howie and I are hoping to do with this book is to give people a process that allows them to support each other's performance specifically without driving them into shame, because shame blocks change. So we're trying to do it in a way that's helpful as an ally as opposed to a critic.
Okay, so give us the process. Give us the 4 steps. How do we begin?
So, why don't I take the first couple and then I'll shoot the next couple to Howie. The first is, to do that thing that I just mentioned, which is shifting from critic to ally. So think for a second, I want someone to change. I'm annoyed, I'm frustrated, I'm hopeful. But where does that come from? It comes from a place of care, of love, of fear, of there's something I want in the world for that other person or for us that's not currently happening. And so I want something to change around that. So the first step is to check ourselves and find the positive intent, for me to find the positive intent in myself, and then to imagine that everybody who acts out of a place of reason from their perspective. So to connect with what might be the positive intent of the other person to why they're acting. So that's just the inner work that I'm going to do in the first step to say, I want what's best for this person. I don't want to attack them. I don't want to shame them. I want what's best. I want to be an ally. And I get that they're acting in ways that probably make sense to them. And I can imagine what some of those ways might be. Now I'm ready to engage. And the third part of that first step, right, after I've checked my own intent and kind of come to peace with theirs, is to ask permission. And we have a formula for that, which is empathize, confidence, and request permission. So, hey, I see that you're seem to be struggling in this meeting, and I could see how frustrating that is, and it kind of feels like you're hitting against a brick wall. And I've seen you really, really effective in those meetings. Do you want to think about it together? Can we talk about it? Would it be helpful if we talked about it? And the end, you've completed that first step when they say, yeah, I'll talk about it with you. Sure. Thanks for noticing. I'll talk about it with you. And then the second step is to move away from the problem and focus on an energizing outcome. So, ask them, so what's the outcome you want? Well, I don't want to feel like I'm hitting against a brick wall. Okay, so that's like the absence of the problem, right? But if you set your sights higher, so what would that give you? For the sake of what? For the sake of peace, or for the sake of impact, or for the sake of what? And they might say, well, what I really want is to feel like I'm helping the team be a high-performing team, right? That I'm participating, I'm contributing to a high-performing team. Great, that's an exciting outcome. If you could participate in creating. So now I've established us as allies, and I've helped you set up a dynamic where you're excited about an outcome that you can achieve, right? So now you're positive about it instead of frustratingly, agonizing about the thing that's not working. Then step 3 is
to find. I picked up that baton, huh? Is to find a hidden opportunity in the problem. And I find that when someone comes up with an outcome that really energizes them, and you can see it or hear it in their voice, in their facial expression, that, oh, like, this is what I want. Right now all of a sudden they're in a place of creativity as opposed to fear. They're now, searching for something instead of trying to get away from something. Now we return to the problem and just ask, like, what's going on? Tell me more about it. So they're not in their head about it. They're not just telling a story, but we're asking for some specifics. When did this happen? What, if you're there, like, what were you thinking at that point, or what were you feeling? And we kind of can get a zoomed in, detailed picture of what's going on in the moments when people are behaving in certain ways rather than other more preferable ways. And then we talk about, so what have you tried? Right, so that people can then say, so we don't, bore them with, like, oh, you could try this, you could try, yeah, tried that. Right, we want to get kind of the whole catalog of what they've tried, partly because some of the things they've tried have worked in the past, right? And I used to do that, or they realize I've been doing this and it just hasn't been working, and so maybe I should stop doing that. And at that point, we then look back at the problem, hold it in one hand, hold the energizing outcome in the other hand, and we look for a way in which we're glad that this problem exists because it's going to help us get to the energizing outcome. There's an opportunity there. So if the person in the meeting is being stymied, because they constantly bring up, let's say, I think you're wrong about this, or you're not doing the research right here, or you're misinterpreting this. And they're kind of, right, the way that this person is behaving is sort of blocking everybody else and making them feel unheard or making them feel unvalued, and like they don't want to offer ideas. Then we say the opportunity there is, well, what I want is for us to have great ideas. My goal here in shutting people down is I only want the best ideas. So now, how can I behave in that meeting in a way that gets the best ideas out there? Now, every time I think the thought, that's not going to work, I then get to try something else and say, tell me what you're seeing here. Tell me where you're coming from. Help me understand your point of view, because mine's different, right? So now it can become a celebration of difference that leads to better ideas rather than a conflict.
A lot of listening, a lot of questioning, a lot of feedback, in the process, isn't there?
Yeah. You mean the 4-step process?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm listening to us talking, and I want to bring us to, I want to kind of connect this with the anxiety, both at work and at home, that so many people feel, and the sort of mental stress that goes on. And it's like, what all of this comes down to is, we feel like when we're in that place of anxiety, almost always we feel alone. We feel like we're going at it and we don't have partners in it, and we're sort of isolated, and especially with this pandemic, and we're just staring at screens all the time, and we feel alone. And the sort of meta conversation, the question is, what do we do so that we show up in support and love and care of each other, and that we invite other people to do the same with us, so that we are not, swimming in this big ocean all by ourselves. And it's like, how do we have conversations about things that can get us looking positively at opportunities in the future? So like, we're giving you a lot of information around this, but really it's very simple when you say, I want to connect with you. I want to think together about the outcome that you want that would make you happy, that would give you some peace and at ease and help you get to where you want to go. And then I want to think together about where are the opportunities that exist in the mix of everything you're experiencing that might be worth trying some things that can help us get to the outcome. And remember, we're holding hands throughout this process.
Yeah. It's interesting. We talk a lot about anxiety is a product of a lot of things that's outside our control. The pandemic put a lot of things outside our control. We couldn't go to work, we couldn't go to ball games, we couldn't go to Broadway, and so on. In your blogs, you've talked a lot about letting go of control. How can we get better at accepting the things we can't change, and how does that help us reduce our anxiety and increase mental health? I'll throw that out to you, Howie.
Yeah, well, that's a beautiful question. So one of the principles of the 4 steps is that you don't have control. So we're not asking people to give up control. We're asking people to recognize that their belief that they have control is an illusion, right? Because if you could control other people, you wouldn't need this book. You wouldn't need to talk to them, right? You would just push a button and things would get done. But we're autonomous, and so recognizing other people's autonomy and recognizing that we also want autonomy, can help us let go of control a little bit, but also like what this process calls for. Like Chester, you mentioned, like there's a lot of talking back and forth and really listening. I think what we're really asking for people is, and this, Peter wrote a beautiful book about this called 4 Seconds, just like in the moment, there's always a choice, but only when you bring awareness to the moment. So I think in some ways the opposite of anxiety is presence, right? When I'm here with myself and with you and with the situation right now. So if we want the people we want to help to be present, to be able to be aware in the moment so they can make other choices, we model that in this process. So we have to, don't do this with someone if you're like multitasking and doing Sudoku on the side or scrolling Instagram over the phone. Like this calls for our presence to be a role model and an invitation for the other person to meet us here and to begin to practice that kind of mindful attention to the here and now, which I think is in large part an antidote to the anxiety that comes from rumination about the past and worry about the future.
When we talked a while back, Howie gave a great example. I put you on the spot last time, so I'm going to put Peter on the spot this time. And I want you to take us through a situation, how you might handle this. Because it's interesting, as we're now out traveling, it used to be people would ask you about your work, your family, your this, that, and the other. Now everybody asks about, so have you been vaccinated? And what vaccine did you get? And and every CEO we're working with is wondering, do we put mandates in place or not? So Peter, I'm going to pick on you. This is a tough issue. So let's say you're vaccinated, but you got family members who are not. How do you change somebody who doesn't want to be changed in this, or can you walk us through that?
It is a great question. It's a hard question. You can't force. I mean, I guess you can technically, institutionally, you can force people to do things, but then they could also leave. So with a situation like vaccines, you kind of follow the same process, right? Which is, first of all, they really may not want to talk about it with you, and if they don't want to talk about it with you, then they're not going to talk about it with you. This is a case where it's a little different. It's, instead of sort of saying, hey, I notice you're not vaccinated. I know you can get vaccinated. I believe in you. You want to think this through together? I think they're going to say no, right? So you can come in with some more vulnerability and say, I know you've made a choice to not be vaccinated, and I'd love to engage in a conversation with you about it. But both, like primarily I want to listen and understand more, right? Like I want to engage with you in this conversation. Would you be willing to talk about it with me? Right? So you're approaching it with some humility, and you're expressing that you want to talk about it for your need, and would they be willing? They can always say no matter what in our process. If you ask permission for something and someone says no, the answer is no. They're not going to have a real conversation with you. Or what I know someone did is they're going to say, yeah, I decided I'm going to get vaccinated. I'm going to make an appointment, with absolutely no intention of doing it, but knowing that that's how to get out of the conversation very quickly. So, that's not very useful either. It's called passive aggressive. It's not passive aggressive. It's actually probably smart as a way of getting out of the conversation. But so the first thing is to be vulnerable and to say, hey, and then the second is to listen and focus on, again, like, what's the outcome? Like, I know that the outcome is health. They don't want to get COVID. And there's things they're afraid of, and there's things they're unsure about. And they're not just not getting vaccinated because they're macho about it. It's actually the opposite. People don't get vaccinated in most cases because, at least in my experience, is because they're afraid of, what they've heard, what they've read, what it might do to their body. So again, remembering what I said, even in these moments where we fundamentally disagree with the decision that someone's making, can we still stand in allyship? Can we still connect with them, not as an aggressive critic, but as someone that says, I get that. I get that you're scared. I'm scared too. We're both scared of our bodies being hurt. We're both scared of something, of dying or of getting long haul COVID. I mean, I'm vaccinated and I'm afraid of getting long haul COVID if I get a breakthrough case. It's not hard to empathize with that. It's just that usually when we engage in that conversation, we kill every last little bit of our empathy in order to go in for the tack, in order to get them to do what we want them to do, right? We approach it as a critic and not an ally. So even in the situation where we fundamentally disagree with the choice they're making, the most powerful move that, by the way, also has the most likelihood of maintaining and building and enhancing the relationship, and B, actually the greatest likelihood of creating change, is to approach as an ally, is to empathize. So I would really say that. And then look at the outcome. What is the outcome that you want? And, they might say the outcome I want is to people stop talking to me about being vaccinated. But then, you laugh and you go, okay, and what is that outcome? And the outcome, is I don't want to be sick. I don't want to put something in my body that's, I don't want I'll say it in exactly the same terms I would say it. I don't want something entering my body that can make me really sick. Well, I think that's something that people who get vaccinated and people who don't get vaccinated would agree 100% on, right? So we're on the same page. And so then the question is, then at that point, when we're not fighting, we're not antagonistic to each other, right? We're exhaling a little bit together. Then we can say, okay, let's look at that. I kind of want to see the stuff that you're reading, and let me show you the stuff that I'm reading, and let's have a conversation about that and see if it makes sense to not get vaccinated. And then I'll just flip this over to say, in a situation where you are the CEO and you're making a decision, and I'm a ski instructor on the side, and the CEO of the mountain, the general manager of the mountain, just said all employees will be vaccinated. If you're not going to be vaccinated, you can't be an employee. That's, we're happy to talk with you about it, but that's a decision that we're making. And I felt relief. For me, I felt relief about that because I was concerned about a bunch of things. Well, the CEOs, people who run companies, people who run offices have every right to create the boundaries that they're going to create, right? I would just say do it in a way that recognizes that your decisions may be hard for people, and rather than bowl through it, lean on empathy.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I love your take on what do you want the outcome to be? Adrian and I grew up in Canada. We're big hockey fans, and my hockey team, the number one goalie, was one of the very few players in the entire NHL not vaccinated. And it wasn't because he didn't want to be healthy. He was terrified of needles. Like he'd literally gotten in the chair 4 or 5 times and just couldn't do it. What happened is he can't get into Canada without being fully vaccinated. And he can't play for the Canadian National Olympic team if he's not vaccinated. So he finally got the first shot. So I really like the idea is what is the outcome? Like, do you want to play in the Olympics? Great. If you want to play in the Olympics, you have to get vaccinated. Well, you guys both talk to lots of CEOs, and we're just really curious about what are you seeing with the overall mental health and anxiety with leaders that you're working with, and how are leaders working with those in their care to get through the anxiety and challenges, not just vaccination, but coming back to work and where the company's going and how the world has changed. Howie, what are you seeing? Are there any trends, and how are they dealing with it in ways that maybe the rest of us can
I'm
benefit?
going to punt to Peter on this one because I think he's got more to say.
Wait a minute. Peter's got more to say? If I had a nickel for every time somebody said
about this. I reserve the right to steal back later.
Excellent. Peter, go.
I mean, first I want to say I love that you're asking the question because so many, it's so easy to ask the question of how should CEOs handle this, and and there's so much energy coming at CEOs. And sometimes I feel, and maybe this is because I coach CEOs, like I feel compassion for my CEOs, like who's looking out for them? Like they have a tremendous amount of anxiety. And if they also don't manage it effectively, then it comes out with a major impact on the organization. So, I've seen CEOs say, someone says in a town hall, hey, we don't want to come back to work. We're more productive at home. And there's lots of ways to answer that. But the way not to answer that is, fine, I don't care. You got to come back to work. Like, we've made a decision you're going to come back to work. If you don't like it, go work somewhere else, right? Not the right way to approach it. But that doesn't come out of a place of a mean CEO. It comes out of a place of a stressed CEO, someone who's trying to hold together a culture in an organization and finding it very, very difficult to do when everyone's working out of closets and bedrooms. So yeah, of course they have great privilege and that comes great responsibility and et cetera. But to really say, like, how do we support CEOs? And I would say, at least what I've been seeing, and I guess I'm biased because this is my coaching, this is the work that I do, which is I want to be someone who can hear and be a safe place for them to be able to vent and express frustrations and anxieties and things like that and talk about it, which is like, you want to deal with anxiety at work, find the right people to talk to about it, right? That's really, really critical. Like, don't repress it. Don't hold it in. Beat on a pillow. That could be useful. But also, like, express yourself to someone for whom it's safe. The problem is with a CEO, it's often not very safe to express that frustration to anybody internally, not to the board, not to their, not to their team. It's just, you can a little bit, but there's ripples of impact. So like, I at least want to be a place where they can express that. And then I also want to give them some skills because I think, like, how do you deal with anxiety? You engage fully with the emotion. You feel everything fully. Like, you feel it. You don't repress it. If you repress it, it leaks out in insidious ways. So you feel everything and you ground yourself. And then from that place of not shame, not recognizing that anything's going wrong, but that you're feeling anything that any normal human being would feel, especially under the pressure of leading in an organization during an incredibly ambiguous, uncertain time. And then once you're able to release some of that energy, then from that place, what are the most skilled ways to engage in a conversation with people about, how we're moving forward and balancing their needs and your needs and what your needs are. And so it comes with a lot of empathy. A lot of times people confuse the fact that if they empathize, they think it restricts their decision making. If I really listen to you and what you need, then and you really don't want to come back to the office, and I really listen to you, then I will no longer be able to make the decision to tell you have to come back to the office. And it's the exact opposite. Empathy gives you permission to make decisions. that as a leader, if you empathize with what other people are experiencing, it does not restrict your ability to make decisions that might be counter to what they want. It allows you to make decisions that might be counter to what they want. So don't lose the empathy piece. It gives you freedom, and it also takes care of the people around you.
I think it's awesome. You're right. Everything right now is beginning with empathy. I mean, if you'd asked us a few years ago, what are the best leadership characteristics, we would have talked about vision and strategy, communication. Today, it begins with one word. It's empathy, right? Hey, how can people learn more about your work, Peter and Howie?
Well,
the best place probably is to. I'm going to let Howie answer this one.
We're on video, my hands up like Horseshack and welcome back, Cotter. I know this one. So,
for those of you who are under 70, that was a TV show back in the 70s.
So the BregmanPartners.com website. If you go there, you can just click on books, or I think it's on the homepage. There's a description of the book, and we have lots of resources there. There's a quiz you can take or a self-assessment on like how what your change style is and what the cost of it might be, whether you could or could benefit from the book. There's also on the back end, a lot of material on BregmanPartners.com. For readers. So we took out 40,000 words from the manuscript like in the last 2 weeks, and some of them were good words. And so there's like 9 sample dialogues actually showing exactly how to use the 4 steps on the website. So that's where I'd go. But you can also get the book at your local independent bookshop, the one that smells of cats and is still there, hopefully. You can also, of course, get it online, anywhere books are sold.
And again, the book is You Can Change Other People. It's a great book. It's an amazing concept. We are about out of time, I noticed, but we have one last question. Chess, do you want to fire off one last question to the guys?
Yeah, I want you to talk a little bit about self-compassion. I know you guys have written a lot about that, and you often hear in conversations, the leader has to put on their oxygen mask first. But talk about how that can help us through difficult times. Howie, self-compassion being an important concept.
Yeah, to me, it's a daily nutrient that I have to give myself all the time because I find myself being highly self-critical, and I think this is true of a lot of driven people, a lot of people who have had high standards throughout their lives. One of the strategies we use is to be hard on ourselves. Right? And so, to the extent that it works, okay, that's great. But in these days and more, like people who are used to success, I think it's a fuel we don't need to maintain our trajectory. So for me, self-compassion is just sort of noticing that moment, usually trying to beat myself up for not being self-compassionate, then beating myself up for not being self-compassionate. And somewhere in there, a molecule of sanity drifts into my brain, and I go, oh, look at you wonderful human. Look what you're doing. Isn't that cute? And then it kind of, the whole thing becomes a house of cards and falls apart, and I can go on with my day.
I'm so happy you asked Howie that question because I'm terrible at self-compassion. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm so bad at it. I wish I was good at it.
That's because you're a skier. Hey, Adrian, have you got one last question before we wrap up?
Let's wrap up. Let's ask you, the one thing we'd like to ask people, since this is the Anxiety Podcast, is what are your rituals of self-care because you're both really successful, amazing backgrounds. What do you do each day to maintain your mental health?
I have, first of all, I exercise every day. It's not even like something I have to remind myself to do because if I don't do it, it's almost a little bit addictive, but I exercise every day. I meditate at least once, if not twice a day. I try to do all of the Maslow's hierarchy, all of the physical stuff. I really find that if I'm not taking care of myself physically, then everything else, falls off from there. So, that's the first thing. And then I try to do something like this every day, like either on a podcast or not, like talk to awesome people and be with awesome people because it just, it just sort of grounds me and makes me feel really good. So that's just a couple of rituals that I sort of consciously make sure I'm doing every day.
Awesome.
Yeah, I also do the meditate, exercise, eat right, breathe. But I'll say the one thing that I do that has made the biggest difference to me is that I pour a bucket of ice water over my head every morning, and I do it for a physiological and a psychological reason. The psychological reason is I hate cold water and I'm terrified, and I try to talk myself out of it every single day, and so it's really helped me build the muscle of being willing to do things that make me uncomfortable. And the physical reason is it's quite a physical stressor. So, that gets my heart rate up. I'm going to fight or flight physically, and then I breathe myself out of it. And it's really increased my capacity to be a container for stress. So when I was a small container for stress, 1 ounce could top the shot glass. Now I'm more like a Munich beer stein, and the same 1 ounce just sort of sloshes at the bottom, and I can handle it.
I seriously thought you were kidding when you said that. Adrian and I have, we ask this question to a lot of people. They say, hey, I'm going to do that. Hey, I'm going to do that. Howie, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, I think actually one of the things that shows is the thing that removes anxiety for some people is the thing that creates, just hearing it creates anxiety.
Chester,
but I love that
I understand your reticence.
I love that you're doing...
Sorry, I understand your reticence. I know you've done tougher things than this. Would you like to think this through with me?
No, I did that ice bucket challenge thing, and seriously, I thought, I'm never doing that again. I can check that box, Anyway,
I love though that you're doing a hard thing every day, and that pushes us out of our comfort zone sometimes.
Yeah.
So good for you.
Hey, listen, guys, it's been great to have you on the show. We're with the authors, in case you were doing something and forgot, but they are the authors of You Can Change Other People. Available at fine bookstores everywhere. Your website, again, is Peter Bregman Partners, right? Or Bregman
Actually,
Partners.
it's just Bregman Partners, BREGMAN Partners, PARTNERS.com.
And just wonderful coaches and leaders and great friends. We're just delighted to have you on the show. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys so much. It's been super fun.
Adrian, just more fun than humans should be allowed. Those guys are great, aren't they?
Well, they are, and wise, too. Love this idea. Starting with the idea, well, look, we all have somebody or many people in our lives we want to change, right? So what do? We criticize, shame, try to motivate, in quote marks, offer unsolicited advice, and how is it taken? Never will, right?
It never works, and yet we keep doing it, I do love their 4 steps, giving you a script to go in. And the thing about being an ally, and I really love the part about, so what do you want the outcome to be? Do you want to stay healthy? Okay, well, let's walk down there. How can we stay healthy? With the goalie, do you want to play in the Olympics? Okay, well, let's figure that out. If you want to play with the Olympics, there's, this is the path to go. And it's more like, hey, let's go down the path together. Let's figure this out together. And instead of, well, you idiot, if you want to play in the Olympics, you have to get vaccinated. Go get jabbed, you knucklehead.
And what this kind of tells me, too, look, this is something that can be extremely anxiety-inducing, is giving and receiving feedback. And we all want to do it. We all have to do it. And so I think what I'm taking away is this is going to take a lot more time and effort than we really think about it. We just sort of throw in this, hey, let me tell you how you're messing up, instead of coming from a place of positive intent, really doing that inner work they talked about, and even asking permission to share. That's really where this all begins is, no, I really don't want you to talk to me about that. Okay, that's where we begin.
Yeah, it's so funny as we're talking about this and as I'm ruminating on the podcast, I'm thinking, I think one of the reasons that we go the shame route is we're just impatient. We just are. We're just like, come on, this is so obvious to me. Why is it not obvious to you? When you become an ally and whatnot, you have to be patient. Yeah. You have to be patient in the process, or as we say, process in Canada. My one thing he said that I really enjoyed, though, he said the opposite of anxiety is being present. Yeah. And when you're present, you're not impatient.
Yeah.
You're calm and you're listening and you're asking those questions. That was really interesting. The opposite of anxiety is being present.
I think one of the other big things from this is this idea of being self-critical, self-compassion. We've talked about this before too, where we need to be our own best friends, but we're not so often. I mean, if you had a friend who told you, Chess, you're never going to do this, you're never going to amount to anything, we wouldn't be friends with him very long. But we are with ourselves all the time, so we have to be a better friend to ourselves, don't we?
Yeah. And then that last piece on empathy I thought was really brilliant, that we think that by being empathetic, being an empathetic leader, it limits our choices. He says it actually expands our choices because we've got more understanding, we've got more buy-in. I thought that was a lovely way to end the podcast.
Love that. So a big special thanks to all of you who have listened in today, to our producer Brent Klein, to Christy Lawrence, who helps us find amazing guests like Peter and Howie.
Yeah, and if you like the podcast, please share it with friends and family. Download the podcast is always a great indicator of who's listening. And join our community, WeThriveTogether.global. We're trying to create a safe place to talk about anxiety and mental health in the workplace. And then, of course, our sponsors, Adrian.
First off, we want to thank our sponsor, Go Happy Hub, the most inclusive and timely way to communicate and engage directly with your frontline employees and candidates with 95% open rates, now offering our listeners 2 months free service. You got to try this out. What is the harm in trying out something for 2 months for free?
That's right. And all you've got to do is say, sent by Adrian or Chester. Probably Adrian will get you the 2 months. I think Chester's really only 1 month, but you'll have to try.
You'd pay more for 2 months. Yeah,
exactly. So, and Life Guides, we've been working with them for a while. Spent some good time with them over the past couple of weeks and love their peer-to-peer community. It helps people navigate through their day-to-day stressors with a guide who's walked in your shoes and done what you've done. And again, because you're listening to our podcast, all you have to do is to go to lifeguides.com/schedule a demo and add the code HEALTHY2021 to get 2 months of free service there as well. So we really do love our sponsors. They make everything possible, as do you coming to listen in every week. We can't thank you enough.
So thank you for joining us today. Hopefully we're helping create a safe place to talk about anxiety and mental health at work. And none of this would happen without you listening in. So thank you so much.
Take care and be well.